What do I do with it? There it is. Good evening, my friends, and welcome to Shadow at Night. It's Sunday, August the 11th, 2024. On the show tonight was Jasper, going to be a 15-minute city. According to documentation from one of their city councilors and a city council memorandum sent to all other members of Jasper City Council, yeah, they absolutely were on track to be a 15-minute city. So is this just accelerating the process? Remember the old expression, build back better. Some people have asked me, can you maybe get a hold of some of the contractors who were involved in the Fort Mac rebuild and see what they had to put in there? What were the new things that they had to put in? And I'm talking about sensors, I'm talking about towers, cell towers, 5G, whatever, that wouldn't have been necessary before in the rebuild of Fort Mac. Is there anybody out there who knows somebody, or maybe you yourself are, one of the people who was involved in the rebuild of Fort Mac? Because I've heard some rumblings from people who tell me that some of the contractors and some of the construction people who were working on the rebuild in Fort Mac were saying, I don't even know what the hell this is supposed to be, but they want us to put this in here. Doesn't make any sense at all. Maybe not at that time, but maybe now it does. And maybe the same thing is going to be happening in Jasper. We'll keep you up to date on that once we can figure it all out. But in the meantime, if you know anybody who was involved in that, please let me know via email or through the website, shadowdavis@gmail.com, SHADOEDAVIS@gmail.com. So we're going to get into that. I'm going to show you that memo in just a few minutes when we get into the Smart City section of the show, which is coming up. And tonight, for all access members at shadowdavis.com, we're going to go deep into the Zionist movement and the Khazarian Mafia. Exactly what is that? And one of the reasons you haven't heard me get too detailed into what I feel is the explanation of what's going on in the world right now is because it's so very, very difficult to separate. I can't even really articulate what needs to be separated, because even in saying it, they've set up a situation where you sound like a racist just for saying a few words. It's amazing what they've done to people over the past 60 or 70 years, just in terms of self-censorship. If you say a couple of words this way or that, you feel inside yourself that you're a racist. I'm not. I'm just trying to break down what's going on, and I'm sure you feel the same way. So we're going to cover this more in the extension tonight. And the other reason for that is simply because on the website, I cannot be censored. Here on social media, we're broadcasting on Facebook tonight and YouTube. By the way, if you haven't followed me on YouTube, go ahead and give that a try. Let's see how long this new channel on YouTube lasts. I think we're close to 2,000 followers. Not huge, but definitely interesting to see what happens. I wonder what the number is going to be before they decide they're just going to turf the channel altogether. We're on Twitch tonight. We're on X. We're on Telegram. We're on Rumble. And, of course, we are on shadowdavis.com for the entire show tonight. The extension will begin probably around 8:45 Central, maybe a little bit later, maybe a little bit earlier. The show is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.ca. The Recover Muscle Cream, it's one of the latest products available at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Experience the ultimate comfort and relaxation as Recover works its magic. Formulated with cutting-edge technology, Advanced Muscle Cream provides unparalleled relief, catering to your unique needs. Recover is not just another muscle cream, it's the next generation of muscle relief crafted with cutting-edge technology, the power of Silverceutical Technologies, and premium ingredients. Recover offers a level of comfort and rejuvenation that you've never experienced before, whether you're an athlete pushing your limits, a weekend warrior, or someone facing the daily grind. Recover is here to support you every step of the way. This and all of the other fantastic products available at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.ca. If you're looking for a retail location, they're all right here. Over 30 of them all across the country right now. And if you'd like to be a retailer of these awesome products yourself, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.ca. We got some bad news a couple of days ago. We're going to get into the latest federal political polling in just a second, but some bad news was sent by Chris Carbert, who was found not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder along with Anthony Olenek a week ago Friday, and tomorrow was supposed to be their bail/sentencing hearing. So here's the note that Chris sent, and he wanted us to circulate it all through social media. So we have, and this is up on my Facebook, by the way, and I've asked you guys to go ahead and write a positive comment, something encouraging to the guys, because we don't know exactly when this bail/sentencing hearing is going to be. It was supposed to be tomorrow, like I say. So here's what Chris says. Hi, everyone. We no longer have court on the 12th tomorrow and have no date booked. So once again, I have to let my kids down, and they and the rest of my family pay for it. It was said on the night of the verdict that an earlier date was preferable and would be looked into, and now we have no date. They don't care, though. They go home to their families every night. My family is just collateral damage. My release was agreed upon for last Friday and changed at the last minute, and now this. I hope everyone, he still has the wherewithal to say, I hope everyone has a good day today. God bless you all. That's Chris Carbert. And I'm sure the same sentiments are coming from Tony Olenek. So we hear from Granny Mackay, it's going to be maybe the 28th or 29th, which means another 2 weeks or more incarcerated for these guys, which is absolutely pathetic. It's pathetic. This seems to me to be the Crown still trying to twist that knife. They're just not playing fair. They're not letting go. Guys, you lost. You lost. It's over. Let it go. But then again, evil. When we say they'd never do that, and I know that some of you guys still say that, they'd never do that. That's you saying, I'd never do that. They would do anything. There's a lot of people out there with very questionable morals, and I believe the Crown prosecutor in this case is one of them. All right, let's get on with the show tonight. The content that I have compiled for you tonight from Abacus Data. Conservatives leading by 20 points as positive impressions of Pierre Poilievre rise. Now, once again, I would like to say that Pierre Poilievre is not going to be the entire answer moving forward. As a matter of fact, we've heard him talk about building high-density apartment blocks next to public transit in major cities. And his housing plan is a little bit different from the Trudeau housing plan, but not very much. High density, high density, high density, which happens to be a part of this Winnipeg Metropolitan Region plan. It's part of a smart city concept, which we'll get into in just a few minutes here on the Shadow at Night live stream. So anyway, he will fix a few other things, most notably the censorship issues that we've been having here in this country. And you guys know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that, based upon the fact that I put up a post a couple of days ago. Regarding the smart cities and Winnipeg 2050 plan. It was shared 1,000 times or more, and people kept messaging me saying, every time I try to share this, I get a nasty message from Facebook saying, we took it down, it breaks community standards. You're in danger of losing your account. Like, seriously? My post is still up, but when you share that post, they threaten you. What? I can't say I've ever heard that before because I did not receive that threat myself, and I'm the originator of the post. Anyway, Poilievre says, yes, he will tackle and get rid of these censorship laws that Trudeau has made in Canada in the last couple of years. And hopefully he doesn't have time to pass Bill C-63. But what does he have to do? What does the Trudeau government have to do with these smart cities? We're going to get into that as well. Poilievre leads by 20. Positive impressions of Pierre Poilievre rise. So what do we got here? There's actually some surprising stuff in this poll, but let's start with this. If an election were held today, 43% of committed voters would vote Conservative. 43, this is a nationwide now. 23% would vote for Liberal, 18% for the NDP, 4% for the Greens. The BQ holds 30% in Quebec. The PPC, I believe, runs at 3%. They don't even rate here on the Abacus poll, and there's all the graphs you need to see. 43% Conservative, 23% Liberal, 18 NDP, 7 for the Bloc nationally, 4 for the Green Party. Here is committed vote intention by province. BC, Conservatives lead 42-17 there over the Liberals and 26% for the NDP with 7 for the Green and 7 for the PPC. In Alberta, you've got 62% who are going to vote blue, 17% Liberal, 13% NDP, 7% for the PPC. Saskatchewan and Manitoba are combined at 51% Conservative, 20% Liberal, 20% NDP, 5% Green. Who votes Green? Like, why are you voting Green? What's the point in voting Green? That's ridiculous. It's just a dumb, wasted, stupid, I don't like saying this, but it is, stupid vote. 3% PPC. In Ontario, where most of the seats are, you know this, representation by population. And Ontario has got 16 million of Canada's 41 million citizens. Occupants. In Ontario, CPC has 44%, 26% Liberal, 20% NDP, 4% Green, 5% PPC. In Quebec, this is amazing. I thought it was a misprint at first, so I checked and triple checked and quadruple checked. It's not. The Conservatives are leading in Quebec. I haven't heard that since Mulroney days. 31% will vote Conservative in Quebec. 30% will vote Bloc. 24% Liberal. 12% NDP. 3% Green. And in the Atlantic provinces, 41 Conservative, 34 Liberal, 19 NDP, 4% Green, and 1% will vote for the PPC. So there's your latest polling. It's from Abacus data. They do a monthly. And I'm sure when the House of Commons resumes next month, late next month, we're going to be hearing more and more about polling and committees and exactly what's on the docket. What are they going to be arguing about in the House of Commons? Some good news for a Freedom Convoy protester. He has had multiple charges dropped after Ontario judge rules police violated his rights. The Justice Center for, Constitutional Freedoms has announced right in your ear, has announced a legal victory, as well as all charges against Ben Spicer dropped, a participant in the Freedom Convoy. This decision comes after a ruling by Justice Timothy Lipson that a covert recording of Spicer violated his charter rights. Spicer, who was arrested on February 19th, 2022, faced charges including mischief, obstructing justice, and possession of weapons. He was apprehended by police in Ottawa while participating in the protest. According to the JCCF, Spicer was standing near the intersection of Bank and Sparks in Ottawa when police officers struck him in the midsection and subsequently detained him during a search of his belongings, which included a can of bear spray and a folding pocket knife. Spicer claimed these items were from a recent hiking trip and had not been used or removed during the protest. All right. The JCCF also reported the Crown submitted a recording of Spicer from a police van equipped with video and audio recording devices without his knowledge or consent. This recording was not disclosed to Spicer. He was denied access to legal counsel during his detention. The Crown sought, like, it's amazing how they're treating these people. By the way, Chris Dacey posted a video from yesterday during the Palestinian protest in front of the House of Commons in Ottawa. It was apparently pretty rough, those Palestinians, and not necessarily the Palestinian protesters, but Black Bloc Antifa, who got into the protest and started throwing people around pretty badly and setting off smoke grenades and whatnot. Chris Dacey went looking for police help. He found them on bicycles about 2 blocks away from the site of all these altercations. He begged them for help. They rode away from him. The video exists on Dacey Media on all social media channels. It's absolutely outrageous. Anyway, let's get back to this story. The Crown sought to use this recording as evidence against Spicer, suggesting it indicated criminal activity and asserting that he had no reasonable expectation of privacy while in a police vehicle. The trial, which took place at the Ontario Court of Justice from November 6th to 8th last year, and again from April 16th to 18th this year. Wow, that's kind of short considering Chris and Tamara are going back on trial, the longest mischief trial in the history of Canada, probably. They start on Tuesday. And by the way, there's going to be a big outdoor fundraiser for Pat King in Ottawa, well, just outside of Ottawa, on Friday. You can find more details on Right Blend on Facebook and X. Anyway, they saw significant legal debate in this case. Spicer's defense argued the secret recording breached his charter rights, specifically his right to privacy while in custody, and the evidence should be excluded. They also contended the arrest was unlawful and that no evidence of criminal activity existed. On August the 2nd, Justice Lipson ruled in favor of Spicer, stating he had reasonable expectation of privacy while in a police vehicle. The secret recording was deemed a violation of Spicer's privacy rights and was excluded from the trial. Additionally, Justice Lipson determined the arrest lacked legal grounds constituting a breach of Spicer's rights under Section 9 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which protects against arbitrary detention. That's the Freedom of Movement Clause. The search of Spicer's and privacy. The search of Spicer's backpack and jacket was also found to be unlawful as it violated Section 8 of the Charter, which guards against unreasonable search and seizure. These cops might be in big, big trouble right now. And I believe Mr. Spicer might have a case here, a legal case, to sue them. The ruling also highlighted a breach of Spicer's right to retain and instruct counsel without delay as protected by Section 10B of the Charter. As a result, all charges against Spicer were dismissed. Awesome. Awesome. An older lady, a senior, has been debanked, and here is Rebel News with the report. Hang on, hold on. The manager of this particular branch of the Scotia Bank is a him. This guy has his spine made of freshly boiled pasta. Oh, they make me do it, so I did it. Hey, man, just leave it off. Leave it off. Don't be a... I'm not going to say the word. Anyway, let's continue. You know what? That's a great point. Why are seniors not included in all of these victimized categories? Why are they not included with all of the minorities, all the victims? Oh, that'd be great if they were, though. Don't you think? Because most of them, they're with us. Okay, hold on. Are you guys not hearing this? Because we are live here. There is absolutely zero in the way of any problem with the sound from what I'm seeing here. Hang on a minute. This is outrageous. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything seems to be fine. All right, so you guys are not hearing this. There should be no problem with sound, guys. So you can hear me, but not the video. Is that what you're saying? Because the video does, in fact, have sound from my end. This is dicked up. All right. Let's try this again. And okay, so you can hear me. You can hear me. Just write it down in your comments. You can hear me. You have been able to hear me the entire time, but not the video. Is that what I'm getting? Okay. All right. I have made some adjustments. I'm going to try this now, and I want you guys to tell me if you can hear the video, okay? I don't know.
Alberta, he asked a question politely about the Pride multicolor Scotia.
Can you hear that? Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, once I'm into the show, you guys, it's very difficult to pay attention to everything I'm doing here, plus your comments. I do try to reserve time when the video is playing to see your comments, and that's why I noticed your comments while the video was playing, because when I'm talking, I can't see what your comments are saying. So anyway, where were we in this video here? We got to go back a ways. Is this even the same one? There we go. All right.
Bank app when it was going to be, and it all has to do with.
All right, so I'm going to summarize this for you to get to where we were in the video. This old lady criticized the Scotiabank DEI policy, talked about maybe seniors should be included in this, was talking about bad service within the bank. She had a back and forth with the him manager of this particular Scotiabank branch, and I believe that summarizes exactly where we were. This young lady here talked to Menzies, although she didn't have much to say because she's only an employee at the bank. She's not a spokesperson. So she's probably going to get herself in trouble for even going on camera here, maybe even fired. So let's continue from this point here.
So I don't know anything regarding the situation personally.
You know, it is astonishing. I've seen the correspondence back and forth between you and the manager, Guy Morin. Why do you think he is not actually giving you a tangible reason as to why you are not welcome at this bank anymore?
Well, the only thing that I could think about was the fact that I, first of all, criticized the bank because the service is not very good. Like you leave emails, you leave messages. It's also a bank where the rotation of the staff is every 2 or 3 months replaced, managers every 3 years. And when we went in, there's no name tag, so you don't know whom to address. So anyway, I complained about the services and then put it in writing. And one of the things that I mentioned is the fact that seniors like myself, I mean, I do basic computer, but I don't have a cell phone, I don't do any apps, things like that. And when I go in, they tell me, go online. And I say, I'm here specifically. What are you here for? I'm here specifically because I don't know how to do it online.
We were there for two reasons. One, to get an explanation why you're persona non grata. And secondly, they still have a small amount of your money. Now, they can't have it both ways. They can't fire you as a customer and then keep your money, right?
Absolutely. And not only that, but I wrote a letter. I was polite. Even I closed the letter by saying, welcome to this bank. I know you have two banks, so it's a lot of work.
I read your letters, and they're very polite, but my goodness, you're being treated as though you're some kind of a con woman, or you've got links to a terrorist organization.
Yes, and the higher bureau that I send a copy to, escalating the things, they says, well, they can do that. They don't have to give you a reason. So go and look in your agreement. Well, 1998, I signed the opening agreement. Do you think I still have it? No. And the headquarters did not want to give me a copy. They say, go to the branch, which we did today. And she doesn't know either. I asked him, can I get a copy of that? Because it was probably a standard agreement. And he says, go to your branch. So I'm here at the branch, following directions.
Right.
And so would you be able to have that agree what people signed in 1998 when they opened the power checking account?
So I would have to get somebody who can go in and look at it.
All right. Oh, this lady has been debanked. She's not going to be rebanked, at least not by Scotiabank. And let me just say this. I hate banks for many reasons, but going into one, I can't stand it. The smell in a bank, you know that, it just, I don't know, just, you know that it's a bank smell. I'm not sure if they actually spray bank smell in the bank every morning or if it's the smell of money or whatever it is, but it's just got that bank smell to it, that musty kind of a smell. And the people always speak to you in a very, maybe not very, but slightly in some cases condescending manner. And everything needs to be so, you need to sign this, you need to sign this. What am I signing here exactly? Right? And you feel like you're under pressure. Or they look at you like, like you feel like you're sitting in the principal's office or something. And they are a service, but they don't give you that impression that they are a service and they're vying against other banks to compete for that public customer. Because they're all working together after all, right? It's almost like going into a government office, these banks. This needs to be stopped. In Canada, we have, 5 major banks and then a bunch of credit unions and regional credit unions and whatnot, some municipal credit unions even. I think we need to take those 5 big banks and break them up into 15 or 20. I seriously think that. I think they can all survive. They can all survive like that in whatever region they happen to exist in. But 5 banks? No. That's not good. That's no, and I think it's maybe even 4 now. Because you're hearing stories about mergers all the time and whatnot. It's just not enough choice. And eventually they're going to try and narrow that down into maybe 1 or 2 banks across the country because you know what's coming, right? This CBDC. So, and this is the kind of thing, this centralization, this is the kind of thing that gives them the power to do this, to be able to just say, you know what? I don't like your attitude. You can't bank here anymore. I mean, a bank is an essential service. Without a bank account these days, how are you supposed to pay your mortgage, your rent, your bills? How are you supposed to do any of that? You can't just walk around with a suitcase full of money. Not that they'd take it anyway, but try and walk around with a suitcase full of money and say, hey, I owe you $1,250 for your rent. Now I have to run across to Hydro. I got to pay that bill for $68.24. Really? Yeah, sorry, you can't bank with us anymore. And good luck over there at CIBC and Royal Bank, too. They're probably going to say the same thing, because they're all colluding together, as we found out when the banks were freezing bank accounts during the Freedom Convoy. Yeah, that may have been on the orders of the federal government. But these banks are so powerful based upon their assets. They could have told Trudeau to go pound sand. We're not doing that. I'm sorry, you can't make us do that. That's unconstitutional, what you're doing. And it was later found to be, in fact, unconstitutional. But if these banks would have stood up and said, no, we're not doing that, that would have been the end of it. That would have been the end of it. These banks are not your friend. If you can, get away from these banks, find a bank or an institution like Bow Valley in Alberta. And I'm not sure if Bow Valley is affiliated with any other credit unions across the country, but hopefully they should be. Hopefully they will be. Canada is on track to surpass 500,000 new permanent residents this year. 500,000 new permanent residents in 2024. My friends, this is a city the size of London, Ontario, or Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, the Tri-Cities. It's larger than Halifax. It's larger than Victoria. 500,000 is larger than the population of Saskatoon and Regina combined. Another newsletter from our friend Brad Salzberg at the Cultural Action Party of Canada, former immigration minister, speaks of Trudeau's terrorist vetting negligence. So with 500,000, over 500,000 of these pretty much unvetted immigrants coming into the country, how many of them may have terrorist ties? As we've all observed, our current government has not been heeding national security advice and has not been vigilant on these issues for the past 9 years. Significant questions are being asked of Canada's security and immigrant vetting processes following the arrests last month of Ahmed Fouad Mustafa El Didi, 62 years old, and Mustafa El Didi, 26, a father and son facing charges that include conspiracy to commit murder for the benefit or at the direction of a terrorist group, in this case ISIS. And Tamara Leach and Chris Barber are still on trial for mischief. Such is the state of Justin Trudeau's postmodern society. Let us not delude ourselves, despite ubiquitous refusal from mainstream media, left-wing corporate media, to hold immigration policy accountable for social degeneration. Citizens with common sense see the writing on the wall. The press in Canada love to rant about racism existing as the core cause of social consternation. The accusation is unfounded. You know it, and I know it. The true culprit is immigration intake, its rapid pace, the quantities, and of course the poor vetting that results from the Liberals' too much, too fast policy. As an aside, I was in a taxi cab last night with an immigrant from India who loves it here. He's an actual immigrant. He's not here as a refugee. He went through all the proper processes, all the proper vetting. He's been here for 9 years, loves Canada. He's got a young family now. And he was upset about the way the Trudeau government is handling immigration today. Because they're just pouring in, he said. They're just pouring in. I had to go through the proper channels, and I still go through channels, even today, as a citizen. And what are all these people doing? They're just getting money from the government. Free money. Free accommodations, everything. And he said these Ukrainian refugees are getting the most. That's what he said. I can't tell you that for sure. Reports have emerged that the pair were able to immigrate to Canada despite the elder El Didi having participated in violence, including torture and dismemberment against an ISIS prisoner. Former Conservative Immigration Minister Chris Alexander, an individual who's seen the situation from the inside, addressed these issues in a recent interview. Over the decades, we have failed on several fronts. One example is the number of Iranian and Syrian regime officials, some with allegations of having committed terrible crimes in those countries, who somehow slipped through our vetting system. But the main challenge today is that the number of threats from terrorist and criminal groups as well as hostile foreign states has grown significantly, while our national security capabilities have failed to keep pace. Let us consider the takeaway. Our Liberal government's implementation of the highest immigration quotas of the past 100 years has resulted in a failure to keep pace in terms of preventing hostile foreign agents from entering our country. Media address certain issues while eschewing others. Nothing unusual there. What concerns us, in particular, is how the media consistently shy away from root causes. What's going on in the UK right now? You wouldn't know if you listened to the left-wing corporate media, because they're telling you it's right-wing extremism over there. For instance, why is Trudeau so insistent upon rushing immigration intake to the degree that national security has been jeopardized? Ever witnessed CBC or Globe and Mail address this? More macabre is that the Liberals understand the negative spin-off effect of mass immigration from Middle Eastern nations, yet permit it regardless. What are these incompetent Liberals up to, anyway? Is their mandate management of a Western democracy, or rather, is this a situation unique in Canadian history? As in, Team Trudeau are really in the business of national transformation. Could their seeds for sowing a covert socialist revolution found in the following? Number one, overwhelm the country with migrants, inclusive of those who wish to inflict damage on society. Check. Number two, when Canadians have difficulty adjusting to the rapid pace of national transformation, brand the culprits racists and bigots. Check. Number three, utilize the behavior of these citizens to justify an infringement of individual rights, impediment of freedom of speech, and various other punitive actions. Check. In this regard, we come to understand why one byproduct of the agenda stands so tall, and that ticket is Islamophobia and its permutations. Despite calculated media sublimation, many Canadians are aware of the riots which have recently unfolded in the UK. Branded anti-Islam in Nature, freshly minted PM Keir Starmer in the UK is being pushed to create an official definition of Islamophobia. One could argue that to do so inches British society toward an implementation of religious blasphemy laws standard among theocratic countries of the Middle East. Back to ex-immigration minister of Canada, Chris Alexander. As we've all observed to our dismay, our current government has not been heeding national security advice, and to put it very mildly, has not been vigilant on these issues for 9 years. 9 years! Justin Trudeau has been PM for 9 years. What a coincidence, huh? Is Canada's woke one, in fact, desirous of such a thing? It may not be as crazy as many imagine. Does it not appear factual that from day one, Trudeau's prime ministership has evinced a calculated or preconceived dynamic? Is it madness to state that our current Liberal government has from the beginning felt as if it's driven by forces beyond our national borders? My guess, Chris Alexander, is that those responsible for these issues have been run ragged in recent years. Translation: the volume of immigrants has resulted in ability for hostile foreign actors, aka potential criminals and terrorists, to easily pop into Canada to carry out their affairs. We need to put sound national security practices back at the center of our immigration policy, as well as our policy across government, in a world where all categories of threat actors are looking for the line of least resistance worldwide to launder money, move operatives, recruit new supporters, and disrupt democracy. Canada has become an easy mark in recent years. If so, Canada may be able to avoid this. Conservative MPs are calling on the House Public Safety Committee to investigate the case of this father and son in Toronto charged with multiple terrorism-related offenses. A charge sheet does allege that Ahmed Fouad Mustafa El-Didi committed an aggravated assault for the benefit of the Islamic State in 2015, somewhere outside of Canada, but doesn't offer further details. What a shock that is. Did Justin Trudeau just transition Canada to a terrorist-conducive society? If so, it should be no surprise. Predecessor Pierre Trudeau evinced the same form of arrogance. It's a Trudeau family habit infused with presumption. They assume to know what's best for Canadians. We need to restore our reputation for a best-in-class immigration and refugee program rooted in sound, reliable national security vetting. A Liberal government failure. We need to harden our defenses, increase our military spending, and upgrade and broaden our national security capabilities to protect Canadians in general, as well as the integrity of our immigration and refugee determination system at a time when hostile state and non-state actors have become more hostile almost across the board. A Liberal government failure. Still, the question remains as to why this situation exists. Random? Calculated? At the behest of international forces like the World Economic Forum and World Sikh Organization, as payback to the government of China for elevating Trudeau's to the PMO and keeping him there? Why? Salzburg asks. Why? In this regard, one thing appears to be in place on a permanent basis. Canadian media may deliver some details, but across the board, they refuse to address the reasons why. And if they get asked, you, my friend, are a racist. So we were talking about Winnipeg 2050 and the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region Committee, this new plan, smart city plan. People have been calling it a 15-minute city plan. It's not really a 15-minute city plan, even though the end results will be the same. Smart city, 15-minute city, complete city, healthy city, all the same thing. Left-wing corporate CTV Winnipeg did a thing the other day on this, and here's what they say. And by the way, here's what the headline they used is, hearing over plan to expand Winnipeg Metropolitan Region fills meeting room in Niverville. Now, what they say here, well, they did say, I think they've amended the article, but a public hearing in Niverville over a future development plan couldn't take place Thursday. Too many people showed up. You may have been one of them. The Niverville Heritage Center was completely full as crowds came out to have their say on the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region's Plan 2050. A future development plan. Like, that's what they call it. This is the largest thing that the city of Winnipeg and its surrounding areas have ever seen. The full crowds caused the meeting to be cut short. RCMP said the meeting ended peacefully with no arrests and they were on hand to ensure safety. The plan has a long-term framework for coordinated land use, servicing, and infrastructure, includes Winnipeg, Selkirk, Niverville, Stonewall, Dunotter, 13 other rural municipalities. If adopted, the plan would become a bylaw applying to the entire region as per the committee, as per the province of Manitoba, and Ian Bushy, who is the minister in charge. Scott Gillingham is the mayor of Winnipeg. He said there's misinformation being spread about the plan. Well, that's not what he said. He did not use the expression misinformation. That comes from your left-wing corporate media source here. Here's what Gillingham said. I would encourage anyone and everyone to read Plan 2050. There's certainly some misconceptions about what I'm hearing from others about what is and what is not in Plan 2050. He doesn't go into specifics here. There's a lot of things that are not factual being spread around, so please, if everyone read Plan 2050, it would really, I think, help in clarifying some of the misconceptions that are out there. Well, Mr. Mayor, I would like to know exactly what misconceptions you're talking about, but that's something other that we can discuss later on. Gillingham said a future session would take place in a larger space, and we haven't found out exactly where or when it's going to be just yet. Selkirk does not want to be involved in this. Dwayne Nickel, the chief administrative officer within the city of Selkirk, said council has passed resolutions to be removed from this plan, saying the majority of residents of the city don't work in Winnipeg, and Selkirk has a functioning administration and urban services. We don't need it. Nichols said he wants Selkirk to have the same autonomy as other cities in Manitoba, Portage la Prairie, Brandon, et al. He said Selkirk has asked the province to be removed from the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region Plan. Interesting. I'm wondering if all of the other communities outside of the city asked to be removed if the province would let them. Where's the money coming from? Is a question that's being tossed around by several people that I've been in communication with for the past couple of days regarding this plan. Where are we getting the money from this? I mean, they're building new transit, they're building new sewers, they're building new pipes, new water. Like, where is, they can't afford, it's billions of dollars. Winnipeg cannot, the city of Winnipeg cannot afford it. It's on a shoestring budget every single year. Sometimes they have to forego snow clearing by February because they've used up their entire snow clearing budget already. And we know there's at least 2.5 months from that point forward where we could get more blizzards and the city won't be able to do anything about it. Cash strapped. No money. Where is the money coming from? Municipal, provincial, federal leaders meet to create more prosperous Manitoba. This was last October after the provincial election that saw the NDP elected in Manitoba. Comes from Global News. So on Friday, last October now, we're talking about, remember, 3 leaders from 3 levels of government met to discuss how their respective levels of government can better work together to deliver results for Manitobans. Dan Vandal, Liberal minister responsible for Prairie's Can, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, and the Mayor Scott Gillingham gathered to discuss topics like revitalization of downtown, trade, northern infrastructure, building on Manitoba's green economic advantage, leading role Indigenous entrepreneurs play in the local economy of communities across Manitoba. Where's the part I want to get to here? Oh, this is funny because I was just downtown yesterday for a few hours. In downtown Winnipeg, major changes are underway. I still haven't seen any major changes at all. You still got drug users, bums begging for money and smokes in the street, people living in the street, sleeping in the street. It's disgusting in downtown Winnipeg. Truly disgusting. Over the past year and a half, the federal government has spent over $100 million to revitalize the city's core. How exactly? Where exactly? Have you been in downtown Winnipeg lately? They've spent $100 million on what? Oh, wait. Maybe that $100 million is going to something else. These 3 levels of government get together. Amazing things happen. Plans get made. Plans get made, my friends. Like Winnipeg 2050. Maybe that's what that is. Now, before we get into this, I want you guys to see this this note that came out on April the 16th of this year. Municipality of Jasper regular council meeting agenda. National Housing Conference report submitted by Councillor Scott Wilson. So obviously before the fire. Scott says, recently I had the opportunity to attend the CMHC National Housing Conference in Ottawa. To say it was eye-opening, hopeful, and inspiring would be an understatement. I feel I'm returning home with a toolbox full of ideas, proven methodology, and gumption to tackle Jasper's acute and unique housing crisis. Was there a housing crisis in Jasper? Across the country, municipalities are challenged with a similar crisis. 3.5 million homes are needed by 2030. And once again, this is a promise that has been made by Justin Trudeau. 3.5 million homes in the next 5 years? I really don't think so. Unless they start building up 400 or 500 square foot apartments in infill sites all across municipalities in this country, all 400 of them that are part of the Climate Protection Plan, part of the Municipalities Association of Canada, or the Canadian Federation of Municipalities, it's called. I'm sorry. Well, Scott goes on to say, we're no different than the rest of the country. In fact, what we need is safe, stable, and appropriate housing for all in Jasper. Legalizing density is the single most important thing we can do in Canada to deliver housing in a climate-smart way. So this means instead of, one person occupancy or two person occupancy, how about 10 person occupancy for every acre? How about that? Let's jam them all in there. We must end exclusionary zoning, low density, bad policy, he says. Across the country, the mantra is infill, which is a fine idea. Fill in the empty spots, right? It's like an implant or filling in a set of teeth. But the rest of this stuff, this is how the low-hanging fruit, the most cost-effective, the most climate-friendly, the easiest on municipal infrastructure. Again, with climate. They need to be challenged to prove there's a problem before they move ahead with any of this nonsense. And that is ultimately the struggle we're going to face. Friends, in the next few months, all across the country, these plans will be moved into place in cities big and small, municipalities all across. They're going to try amalgamating, they're going to try centralizing power, and it's going to be under the guise of a climate crisis. So be prepared to be called climate deniers until they're blue in the face. And learn to let that roll off your back. Because all you are is questioning things that these guys have already come to conclusions on, which are obviously wrong because there's still all kinds of debate out there, whether it's muzzled or whether it's not. It doesn't matter. If you can't question it, it's not science. It's a cult. Lucky for us, this is our only option. We have the benefit of always knowing we aren't building outwards, so we must build inwards. We know the playing field. We must enable homeowners, businesses, builders, developers, and government to get to work and solve our own problem. Remove parking minimums. We're a 15-minute city. We have a public transit to enforce the antiquated view, blah, 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 blah. 15-minute city. That's what we are, 15-minute city. So they went right ahead and used it, 15-minute city. All right, I've played this on the show before. I'm going to play it again. This is Angela Small of Detroit, Michigan. She's kind of like the United States version of Maggie Hope Braun when it comes to revealing exactly what's going on. For those of you who have not seen this before, I believe it's like a 25-minute presentation. We're going to play the whole thing for you, and then we're immediately going to go to the extension on shadowdavis.com and talk more about smart planning, where this possibly comes from, and Zionism, extreme Zionism, who in fact is running the world. But I can't talk about that here. I can only talk about that in a completely and totally censor-free, community standards-free zone, and that means the website, shadowdavis.com. If you're not an all-access member, go there now and become one. Here's Angela Small talking about the UN plan to end private property. Even if you have seen this before, please watch it again. Here we go.
So I am the, I'd say, co-influencer of a movement that I hope will really take hold here in the United States and especially here in Michigan. We started a movement called Project 2020 Vision, and our mission is to educate, connect, and mobilize average, everyday citizens to get involved in their local area concerning all things related to the year 2030. The year 2030, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and it is very important, and you will understand by the time we're done with this. So I was reading a poll, and it said 79% of people in America know something is very, very wrong. That was me. As Mark just said, or Matt, I'm sorry. As Matt just said, I am a registered nurse, and when the COVID pandemic first hit, I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know where it was coming from. And my husband can attest to this. I was on a warpath. I was obsessed with trying to figure out what in the world is going on. I was fortunate enough to come across a lady. Her name is Rosa Corey. If you guys have never listened to her before, I highly suggest that you look her up on YouTube. She was a commercial real estate appraiser, and she was talking about this thing, Agenda 21. And I will be very honest, when I first heard it, I thought, that's conspiracy theory, that's crazy, there's no way. But I chose to do what nurses are trained to do, which is critically think, right? You don't just believe things because you hear them. Everything has to be evidence-based. And so I approached that with this approach, and I'm going to take you through in a very cliff note, very, very fast way to show you exactly what I've come up with. So everything that I say today is 100% factual. If it's my opinion, I will tell you it's my opinion. Everything that I'm telling you today has been heavily vetted, so I just want you guys to feel comfortable with what I'm saying. I'm not just making this stuff up. Okay, so just follow along with me. This may not make sense at first, but I promise you it'll make sense by the end. The United Nations. I know you guys are all, from my understanding, everyone in this room is pretty savvy on what's happening in the world and the United Nations. But I want you to start thinking about the people that aren't savvy, all right? Because what I want to do is I want to empower you and educate you to start having these conversations outside of your circles, all right? Because what we're going to talk about today is going to require everyone's consent. And if we can start teaching people about this and teaching them to say no, regardless of which side of the coin they're on, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. If we can get people to start saying no, we have a shot at actually stopping this, because this is a very, very well-funded, well-organized plan. So most of us know the United Nations as for their peacekeeping efforts, for the humanitarian aid around the world, but very few people know that the United Nations has a plan to implement land use policy changes in every single city, state, and town across America. Now, this is actually global, but for sanity's sake, we're going to stick to the United States. All right, but very few people are aware of that. So very few people are also unaware that the United Nations is behind this term sustainable development, which we all know now. We've all heard sustainable development is being crammed down our throats. The average person, when you go out and talk to them and you ask them, what is sustainable development? What does that mean? And they'll give you answers like this. It's an effort to save the planet from climate change, right? It's instituting green energy, more responsible energy usage, better waste control, recycling, that sort of thing. That's what people think this is about. And they don't understand that the United Nations has different plans than what the average person thinks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the history of where that term sustainable development came from and how it got us here today. I'm hoping to connect some dots. These last few years have been like world gone mad, right? And it came out of nowhere. And I'm hoping to connect some dots so that you see the organization and that it wasn't just this haphazard kind of thing that happened, all right? So let's start with Maurice Strong. Who was Maurice Strong? He was the former director of the United Nations Environmental Program and chairman of the World Wildlife Program, which I will explain to you in just a little bit. These were his main beliefs. Capitalism cannot meet the needs of the population and must be replaced with socialism. He was a professed socialist. Do a quick Google search on Maurice Strong and you will see the kind of person that this is. All right, not a good guy. Why is that important? Maurice Strong actually coined the term sustainable development. All right, so you got to go back to the root of the person that coined the term that they're trying to sell us now in the name of environmental justice. All right, what he said was sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs of future generations. Nothing nefarious about that, right? No one would argue that. But what he did was he wrote a book in 1987 called Our Common Future. I have it here, I read it, it's an actual book. And this is where he coins the term sustainable development. And this, just on the surface, sounds good until you actually read the book. Most people don't read the book. And he talks about all the rights that you're gonna have to give up and all the things that they're gonna have to put us through for sustainable development. So what did he do? In 1987, he took his idea of sustainable development to the United Nations, and I'm quickly paraphrasing all this. It's a little more complex than this, but he took his idea to the United Nations. The United Nations said, you know what, that sounds great. We're gonna give you 5 years. We need to come up with an action plan. So we're gonna fast forward to the year 1992. 1992 was the unveiling of Agenda 21. And that's this book. You can buy this on unitednations.org. I am not making this up. I know Agenda 21 sounds conspiratorial right off the get. It is not. All right, you can get this on Amazon, United Nations website. So what exactly is this? Our common future was the concept of what we need to do to protect the environment. but they didn't have an action plan. So Agenda 21 is that action plan. It's a 300-page implementation plan for sustainable development that was created by the United Nations and introduced in 1992 at the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. Please hear this. It is an action plan constructed by the United Nations to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all information, all energy, all production, all law enforcement, and all human beings in the world. That's what this is, all right? George Bush, at the time, was president in 1992. It's a very common thing for the President of the United States to be the one to present, new ideas. They're usually like the keynote speaker there at these United Nations gatherings. So George Bush was our president. He signed us on to Agenda 21 along with 187 other countries. Donald Trump was the first president, the first sitting president to take us off of Agenda 21. So when you look back at how angry they were when he became president, that's why. Because they have put years and years and billions and trillions of dollars into this. And God just threw us a wild card. He really threw us a wild card. So at this Earth Summit in 1992, again, we're going to go back to our friend Maurice Strong. And he opened the United Nations Summit up with these words. Current lifestyle and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable. Then he goes on to say, isn't it the only hope for the planet that industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about? So picture this, he's talking to 187 other nations, and he's saying, isn't it our responsibility to bring what about? The collapse of civilized societies. For what? In the name of the environment. So we have Our Common Future in 1987. 1992 was the unveiling of Agenda 21. So Agenda 21 was the action plan, but what they didn't have was the nuts and bolts of what does the world look like under Agenda 21. And that's what this big blue book is. It's called the Global Biodiversity Assessment. I have it here. I have read most of it, believe it or not. I've spent hours and hours digging through this, trying to find answers to some really, really hard questions. This book was actually written by 1,500 scientists that were hired by the United Nations to give us that picture of what the world looks like under Agenda 21, and I'm going to take you through that right now.
What's the name of the book again?
What's the name? It's the Global Biodiversity Assessment. I will have them up top too if anyone wants to see them afterwards. All right, so what does Agenda 21 say is unsustainable? Well, first of all, it says private lands are unsustainable. That's on page 782, and that's why what Carla Wagner is going to talk about today is so important. It also talks about the Wildlands Project, which I'm going to talk to you in just a little bit. That's on page 993. It also goes on to say suburbs, private vehicles, air conditioning, appliances, golfing, skiing, fishing, gardens, pastures, meat eating, roads and concrete, dams. The legal system is not sustainable because it doesn't represent the environment. Not my words, theirs. All right? Consumerism and people over a number of 1 billion are unsustainable. So let's go through Agenda 21 really quick. Some quick points here. Agenda 21, please know these are, and you guys, I know you guys know this, they are made up of unelected global and local governance. We did not vote for these people, but the problem is they're using the people that we are voting in or the people that got in, right? Agenda 21 also calls for public-private partnerships. This is also where your ESG score starts to come in. If you don't know what an ESG score is, please, please, please study that, understand it, because this is how they're going to implement a lot of this. Public-private partnerships, a really, really good example of that is during the COVID pandemic and let's say Facebook and the government. Right, the government went to Facebook and said, these are the people that you need to censor. That's public-private partnership. So let's understand ESG a little bit more. So when you start to study this and you get into the United Nations website, and you can find all this on their website, they have these 3 pillars of sustainable development where social, environmental, and economic issues in the world all need to meet in this sweet little spot in the middle, and that's what they say is sustainable. So ESG is like a social credit score. It stands for environmental social governance, and it's their way of implementing social equity, which is basically where no one has more than anyone else. Right? No one has more food, no one has more money, no one has access to more water, bigger house than their neighbor, no one has access to more health care, no one has access to more land use, transportation, energy, no one has more children than anyone else, and so on and so forth. It also calls for, it has a strict population policy, and I told you on page 773, this is what it states about the 1 billion people. It is estimated that an agricultural world in which most human beings are peasants would be able to support 5 to 7 billion people. In contrast, a reasonable estimate for an industrialized world society at the present North American material standard of living would be 1 billion. So they're saying we've got 2 options here. In the name of the environment, remember this is all about the climate. We either get the population down to 1 billion so we can all continue to live how North America lives with your cars and your air conditioning and your appliances, right? Or everyone has to live like peasants. And that's on page 773. They are also indoctrinating our children. I have the book here. This is the children's edition of Agenda 21. There's a page in here that says the earth groans every time it registers a new birth. That's what they're teaching them.
What's the name of that one?
Rescue Mission. Yep. It calls for intense support of reproductive rights, especially women's rights. That is what Proposal 3 was all about here in Michigan. Michigan is actually really important in this whole battle against this, and I'll show you why in the end, but that's what Proposal 3 was all about. It puts the wealthy and the poor on the same playing field. Again, this is a socialist agenda. It calls for strict migration policies in favor of open borders. So now maybe what's happening at the border makes sense, right? As soon as we switched administrations, what happened? Borders open. No rationale for it, no reasoning for it, no law behind it. It's just because it's part of Agenda 21. It allows for the monitoring, metering, and restricting of our energy and water use via smart meters. Yeah, everyone's being pushed smart meters. They can absolutely 100% take control. I don't know if you guys read about that when they had that heat wave in Colorado and they took over those people's thermostats. And they said, we're only going to allow you this much. It declares our public lands off limits to human use. So this map was actually presented back, earlier I mentioned the Wildlands Project. And this map was actually part of the Wildlands Project. It was actually struck down in the Senate back in 1994, but please know it has not gone anywhere. They have just renamed it. It's now called the Rewilding Project, and it's part of Biden's 30 by 30 plan, if you guys haven't heard of that, where 30% of our lands are owned by the government by the year 2030. But the takeaway on this map is everything in red and yellow is not for human use. Literally everything in red and yellow is not for human use. Red is completely off limits. Yellow is what they call buffer zones. Buffer zones maybe will very, very minimal human use. This is like scientists and that sort of thing that are going to be allowed in these areas. You can't see it probably very well. There's little blurbs of green in there. That are kind of sporadically placed, and that's where you and I are going to live. They're no longer called cities. They're called normal use zones of cooperation is what they're called, believe it or not. Agenda 21 is going to restrict private property to a select few, and again, that's why I really hope you guys pay attention to Carla Wagner and really understand what she's trying to do. It's much bigger than just saving you a couple $1,000s a month or a year. It's much, much bigger, and you'll understand that in a minute. This is what the Agenda 21 book, the yellow book, says.
I didn't do it. It just fell off. Concerning land. It says land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth and therefore contribute to social injustice. If unchecked, it may become a major obstacle in the planning and implementation of development schemes, and schemes they are. The provision of decent dwellings and healthy conditions for the people can only be achieved if land is used in the interests of society as a whole. Public control of land use is therefore indispensable. Agenda 21 also will institute a carbon CO2 tax on businesses. This is probably how they're going to go ahead and, yeah. Just pinning random stuff to my sweater. I'm like, I have no idea what this thing is. Anyways, it's going to institute a carbon tax on industry. This is how they will absolutely 100% get rid of your middle class, your small business owners. They won't be able to afford this. It's also going to destroy our dams and pulverize our roads. And it's going to introduce something called regionalism. If you guys don't understand what that is, please start studying that. The goal is to get everyone into a region, or what they call a city center. I have different, these are all different names of, as I've studied this, I've grabbed names out of these books, but they're called green city centers, mega districts, human settlements, islands of human habitation, urbanization projects, and 15-minute cities. They're all one and the same. But basically what they look like is, because they're saying you can no longer be in your private home because that's not socially just. It's not fair that you live on a home and this person over here doesn't. So the goal is to get everyone off of their property, and believe me, they will tax you and regulate you out of your homes. That is the goal. That's what they want to do, tax you and regulate you out of your homes. But everyone's going to live in a mega district, whatever you want to call it. The average apartment is going to be 600 square feet. If you go to major downtown, even if you go downtown Detroit, you can see it. This mixed-use zoning that they're doing, where everything is real shopping on the bottom floor and then like pack and stack apartments on the top, right? That's where everyone's going to live. In case you don't believe me, you can go onto a website called america2050.org, and interestingly enough, when you go to that, it'll redirect you to the Regional Planning Association. You scroll about halfway down the front page and it says defining U.S. mega regions. There's a PDF on there. You click on it, about halfway through the PDF, you can find this map, and they already have the 11 regions mapped out for us. As you can see, the Great Lakes up near us is the biggest. Major railways connecting every mega region. Electric cars would be mandatory, but most likely obsolete. They want to connect them by railways, so you won't even have to drive anywhere. How are they making this happen? Through an organization called ICLEI. ICLEI stands for the International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives, which is tasked with carrying out the goals of Agenda 21. This was actually started by Bill Clinton when he formed his President Council on Sustainable Development. So, why are you so important? All right, this is a YouTube video. I'm not going to show it, but you guys can take a screenshot if you want. You can watch it later. This is actually Maurice Strong, and I grabbed something that he said out of this that was really important. The future of civilization is very much in the hands of those who make local decisions, which determine the direction of society. There has to be a relationship between what is happening at the local level and what is happening at the global level, because what is happening at the global level is just a collection of what is happening at the local level. Your involvement in this, your understanding of this, you going out and educating people on this is beyond important. Remember, they need our consent. And if we can get enough people to understand this and say no, even if they don't understand it to its core like maybe I do, enough where they're uncomfortable enough with it to not go along with it, we actually have a shot. So why haven't you heard of Agenda 21? I got about 2 more minutes and I'm done. Why haven't you heard of Agenda 21? Well, this is J. Gary Lawrence. He's a renowned planner, and he was also an advisor to the President's Council on Sustainable Development. And this is a quote from him. Participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring about many who would actively work to defeat any elected official undertaking local Agenda 21. So we will call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. I guarantee right now, whatever city you live in, if you go and look into your city planner, like the plans for the city, you will see all 3 of these words. I guarantee it. And they are not using your elected officials, they're using like your city planners and your city managers, because those people are appointed. They're not elected. They're not responsible to you.
All right, so where are we at now? You will no longer hear it called Agenda 21. What happened in 2015 was the United Nations reassembled and they said, hey, we had this agenda for the 21st century, but it's not moving fast enough and we have to put a timestamp on it. So they gave, in 2015, they all agreed on the year 2030. If you go on your phone right now, every single major city in the United States has a 2030 plan. Detroit 2030, Minneapolis 2030, New York 2030, every single major city has a 2030 plan. So this is very organized, very, very organized, and it's very serious. This is actually just a screenshot of the new Detroit 2030 district. See how they're using the language? They're trying to get you used to that language. You can go to this website and check it all out for yourself. So why is Michigan so important? I know you guys just had a speaker, I think maybe back in the summer, I don't remember his name, but he was talking about Gretchen Whitmer and the World Economic Forum and her being keynote speaker. And he was trying to explain why. Well, this is why. If you go on the World Economic Forum, so the World Economic Forum, if you're not privy to who they are, they're just another arm of the United Nations. The United Nations deals with social policy. The World Economic Forum, again, unelected global governance. They deal with economic issues, business issues. So the World Economic Forum has actually established its Global Center for Urban Transformation in Detroit. Detroit has been chosen by the World Economic Forum to be their pilot program for the rest of the country. That is why Whitmer was a keynote speaker at the last World Economic Forum talk they had. Yes, all right, so one last thought. I used to go crazy over this. Like I said, I was a nurse. I couldn't understand what I was witnessing in the hospital, all right? The doctors, the nurses, people that were mentors to me, these are very, very smart, educated, usually very, very rational people, and I couldn't understand. And so I was at home one day in the shower and I said, how did Hitler get an entire country to do what he wanted them to do? And I came across this. It's called an Hegelian dialectic. Hegel was a German philosopher and he created the term dialectic, which was a concept for ideology and control. And this is how Hitler did what he did. Because he's got many statements about Hegel and how he used his philosophies. A crisis is created and used to dupe citizens into surrendering their sovereignty in small chunks over time while convincing them that they're actually empowering themselves. The crisis today is climate change. Regardless of your stance on it, I'm not saying we shouldn't take better care of the environment, and not every environmental program is bad, but they're using that crisis to get you and I and the people out there that are unaware, and the people are falling for it hook, line, and sinker. Hook, line, and sinker. So, thank you. You guys, I have a website. It's called project2020vision.com. You can email me here at info@project2020vision.com. You guys can sign up to my email list. I am going to be starting a Substack because I do want to dig into this a lot deeper and keep people educated. So I would really appreciate if you guys would support me in that way. And I also do have the manuals. They're digital copies.
Okay, so that's Angela Small. And she's a nurse from Detroit who just started researching all of this stuff. And that presentation, my friends, that 27-minute, 42-second presentation is probably, I had a lot of people in the last few days asking me, all right, now, Shadow, I've got my friends coming to me, and they're asking me for proof. They're asking me to show them some kind of proof of a conspiracy theory that has come true. And rather than go through all of the things that have happened in the past 4 years, because that could take days and days and days, ultimately, the biggest thing that we're facing right now is this Agenda 2030. As Angela points out correctly, that every city, every municipality has got some kind of agenda like that in place, 2030, 2035, 2020, 2050. And it all goes according to that UN plan. Share this video. Join Kickley on Facebook. There are different groups on Facebook for every province, every region. Make friends with Maggie Hope Braun on Facebook. I'm going to put this into the comments right now. This is going to come out on YouTube and on Facebook. A link to this presentation. The best way, if your friends are looking for proof of something, would you not say that this was an absolutely fantastic presentation that exposes everything that's going on right now? And by the way, believe me, I'm embarrassed that Maurice Strong is not only Canadian, but he's also from Manitoba. And he is the guy responsible for all of this. This is, to me, this is like, wow. I'm ashamed. This is the best presentation that I have seen, and I've watched a lot of these things in the past few months, ever since seeing this for the very first time. And I will tell you that if you share this with somebody who actually wants to understand what's really going on, this presentation will do it for them. Angela has read all the books, as she pointed out in her presentation. And it's very difficult to go ahead and create a 27-minute, 30-minute presentation with all of the information she has at her fingertips and all of the things that she went through. And those books. Get those books. Try and read those books. Find out exactly. Make yourself an authority on this subject, because the time is coming. Your city, your town is going to be exposed to this. The people who are trying to present it, they're trying to roll this out, they don't have the first clue as to what's going on. Former CBC reporter Marianne Cloak, who's a Winnipeg person, interviewed the chairman of the board of the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region the other night or the other afternoon in Niverville after that meeting. And she said, "Why are you bringing UN Agenda 2030 into this?" "Well, now you're just making stuff up." That's exactly what he said to her. "Marianne, come on, you're making stuff up." No, she's not. It's in their own literature. These people either don't know it, haven't read it, or have no clue what Agenda 2030 really is, and they've left this up to the people who have been writing these reports, the consultants who have been writing these reports, like maybe the Canadian Urban Institute. Look at this. Canadian Urban Institute, smart planning our smart cities. Well, this is a practical guide intended to assist municipalities, provinces, and solution providers in developing smart city master plans for communities across Canada. It outlines key strategies for the plan. The Canadian Urban Institute, smart planning for our cities. And look what I found. Like when you click on the launch, there it is. Smart planning for our smart cities. June 2018. And all of the things that Angela talked about in that presentation are listed right here in this. canurb.org. I'm going to put this link into comments as well. canurb.org. If you want to find out who is putting these together across the country. And yes, she's right. It has everything to do with ICLEI. But you can't find ICLEI in Canada. They work under the guise of the Partners for Climate Protection, like Maggie Hope Braun says. Why do you think that I have been telling you now for the past 2, maybe 3 months, how important that woman is to everything that's going on right now? Maggie knows this stuff. She knows all about the joining agreements that all of the municipalities, 400 of the municipalities across this country, have signed with ICLEI under the Partners for Climate Protection, which is part of the Canadian Federation of Municipalities. But they hide in the background. You can't find them. They're linked to websites, linked to this other. They are devious. They operate as a shadow agenda. You can't find them. You can kind of, and then you can't. And then it moves off into the Partners for Climate Protection. Can you find their offices? Can you find any employees? Very difficult. But yet they're there. And I still don't know exactly how they interact with these bureaucrats in these municipalities across the country. I haven't got a clue. I don't know if they're interacting with the politicians. I don't know if they're interacting with only bureaucrats. The bureaucrats, remember, are there in place for years. This is the deep state that everybody keeps talking about. Bureaucrats. I mean, how many people do you know that work for the government, any level of government, municipal, provincial, federal? I've been with the government for 25 years. These are the people who have been doing this. Now, it's not like they might know what they're even doing either. They just take direction from their boss, who takes direction from his or her boss, and so on and so on and so on. Up the chain it goes. They may not even realize. They might be working on one small part of the plan, but not the whole thing, so they can't put it together, and they're not thinking that way. I am urging you to share that presentation by Angela Small to anybody who might be interested in finding out more about Winnipeg 2050 or any of the other smart city, complete city, healthy city, 15-minute city plans across this country. Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver. Calgary's water thing, that's all part of it. The UN has actually called for water rationing through the World Economic Forum. I believe the Calgary water situation, that was no accident. Of course, I don't know exactly what they're going to be trying to do, but I do know that people in Calgary, some people, not all, are still having trouble accessing water, and the water restrictions aren't completely done, at least not yet. What are they planning to do? I don't know. Make it a smart system somehow? It's everywhere. And all of the infrastructure, I believe, is probably already in place for them to lock it in. Electric fences, all of that stuff. That's what they were doing during the lockdowns. When we were all locked away for COVID-19, that's what they were doing. That's my opinion. Once again, I cannot prove that, but it sure seems that way. All of us were distracted by something else. Now, as far as Hezbollah, Israel, the Khazarian Mafia, all of that, we're going to get into that in the extension in just a couple of minutes for all access members on shadowdavis.com. Once again, guys, I apologize to you for the technical difficulties tonight. It's interesting, whenever I come off a couple of days off, the equipment doesn't seem to function properly. I'm going to have to do a better shakedown before I do my first show of the week. And by the way, something else. I am going to be moving back to regular Monday to Friday shows after Labor Day. So this has been a summertime thing, this Sunday to Thursday thing. After Labor Day, we're going back to Monday to Friday at 8 o'clock Central on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, Telegram, Rumble, and shadowdavis.com. For all access members, I'll see you in just a couple of minutes with more about what I was talking about, Hezbollah, Khazarian Mafia, all of that stuff. For the rest of you, I'll catch you tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central, for another Shadow at Night live stream. Love you all, appreciate you all, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.